Hi, I'm Yoram Solomon, author of the Book of Trust and host of the Trust Show podcast. And the best sales advice I ever got was never go into a sales meeting if you don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Ooh, that's good advice, Yoram. So who gave that to you? When did you have that?
That was my first boss when I moved to the US back in 1998. You will appreciate that. He's former Navy. I don't remember if he was a commander or a captain, but he served on nuclear, stuff. We'll leave it at that. Um, and I thought when he gave me that advice, I thought that was the weirdest advice. How do you know what the outcome is going to be? And I thought about this more. I mean, he was a man of few words, so he just said that, and I had to figure out what it means. But really, what he meant was don't go into the meeting before you know who's going to be there, before you know what they care about, before you know what's important to them, what's not important to them, what they can afford, what they can't afford. When you know all of that, when you do your homework, as opposed to today, the culture of cold calling, I'm putting 10 numbers on a speed dial, and by the time one of them answers, it takes like 8 seconds or 7 seconds. It takes 7 seconds for them to actually get on the line. And I'm thinking, you had 8 seconds, you wasted seven of them. That's the culture we have today. But back then, it was I before I went into a meeting, I did a lot of research of who the person is, what do they care about, what do they not care about. I mean, it's easy to go into a meeting and bring up stuff that they don't really care about. What can they afford? What would be the best for them? So by the time I go there, I know what the outcome is going to be.
Wow. Well, that amount of trust or that amount of prep has got to get you some trust, right? I mean, you seem like someone then who people actually want to listen to and to have in their presence. Is that right, Yoram?
Yes, I believe so. I'd like to think. Hey, people pay me to come and talk to them. I used to pay people to listen to me. Yeah.
That's so funny, man. That's so funny. Well, you say that you wrote the book of trust. I love that intro, but you also wrote the mini book of trust. Thank goodness, because the book of trust is 550 pages. And I always read my guests' books, but you actually suggested, Phil, don't read the book of trust. Read the
Yes,
mini book of trust. So hold up the book of trust. You probably need both hands for that one.
this is the
So
book of trust. Yes, you
holy
do.
buckets, 550 pages. So wow, man. So what's I got to know, right, from a trust perspective though, what's the difference between this book and that book?
It's easy. 370 pages. That's the difference. Or 150,000 words. That's the mini book of trust that you're holding. Well, here's the deal. I did a lot of research on trust, different aspects of trust. What makes a person trustworthy? How do you know if you can trust someone? I built a whole new model. My second TED talk was the relativity of trust, because I have a very unique approach to trust, to what trust is, to how trust behaves, and it's not how people typically think it is. Uh, and so I put all of this, and I had the first edition, then the second edition. By the time I got to the third edition, I had 570 pages, and I was fine with that, because it does give me that credibility of this is right now. This is by far the most comprehensive book ever written about trust, and there is no fluff there. There's 190 something thousand words that are meant to be there. But it's one thing to put everything into a book. And really, the main reason is I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. And if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, what's going to happen to everything that I know? Well, then I make sure that every year a new edition of the Book of Trust would come out. I record my own podcast, the Trust Show, where this is a solo podcast where it's only me talking. That's how I make sure that if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, something will stay. But people are not going to read 190,000 words or 550 pages. I mean, it takes a different level of commitment. And it hit me last year when meeting planners that invite me to either do keynotes or workshops or seminars or anything, they asked me, what book should we get? Should we get the Book of Trust? And I found myself saying, no, don't get the Book of Trust. Are you crazy? And they go, what do you mean? I mean, this is your book. This is your main book. Yeah, I know it's my main book. Don't get it. Nobody reads 550 pages, 190,000 words. I put it in a book so that it will stay in case I don't wake up tomorrow morning. And I realized then I didn't have anything else to offer other than, I have this series of mini books that I call Can I Trust You? I'm actually working on the sixth one in that series. And those are specific to specific roles. So to fill that gap, I created the mini book of trust. That's the one that you have. So it really gives you everything at the higher level. It takes you through the 8 laws of trust, the 6 components of trustworthiness, the 7-step process, trust habits process that just now got trademarked as well. And which would work well with the song 8675309. I don't have 5309 anything, but I have the 867. So it's everything that you need in 179 pages in 40,000 words, which it would be something that someone would read. Now, you read that and you go, wait, I need to understand the research behind it, because there is a lot of research. Part of it mine, part of it from other people, which I quote them with their permission. And every person that I quote in that book, I actually had a conversation to go deeper into their own research. So if you want deeper, get the Book of Trust. If you want more subtlety and some additional things, go to them, including the mathematical model is explained in the Book of Trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely worth reading, and a good book, not too long, which I appreciate. So with that, Yoram, you said you have a different model, and I totally agree. I read this and I'm like, yeah, that's a different model. So what is trust to Yoram Solomon?
Well, the simplest definition is that trust is your willingness to accept the possible negative consequences of giving control over something you have to another person, expecting them to minimize the negative consequences. I know it's a mouthful. When every time I put it on a board, I take like a 1-minute break and I let people look at it and I see them go, yeah, because really that's what trust is. It's the reason you're taking risk is because you want some reward. There is no risk, no reward, right? So you want to get some reward. You know that it comes with risk, but you don't feel, if there was risk and there's nothing to compensate for that risk, then you're in danger, and nobody likes to be in danger, not even in the Navy. But if you're you want to feel safe, and in order to feel safe, you need to compensate for that risk. And the way you compensate is by trusting someone, something. So you want to avoid the risk. You are trusting someone. The way you're trusting someone is by giving them control over something. It might be money, it might be your internet account, it might be your career, it might be your life. You served in the military, and by the way, thank you for your service. I served in the military, and you get to points where people trust you, literally, not figuratively. Literally, they trust you with their lives. And so you give them control. When you trust them, you give them control, and you really expect them to minimize the possible negative consequences. So that's what trust is. But I think that the uniqueness of my model is really in the relativity of trust.
Yeah, that's what I got out of your book as well, right? The relativity of trust absolutely hit me as well. I wrote down a few things about that, and certainly want to talk about that, right? You said not only is it the relativity, but also the personal nature, which I thought was really interesting. Those are things that most people they just think, well, Yoram's trustworthy, good enough, right? I'm going to move forward, and I'm always going to trust Yoram, or the opposite is true, right? Phil is shady, so I'm not going to trust Phil for anything, right? Either one is often is what I hear. So explain that more. Let's start with the relativity piece of that, and then from there we'll go to personal.
Yeah, that was actually the title of my second TED Talk, The Relativity of Trust. One of the examples I gave was in the TED Talk was let's talk about risk taking. Would you consider yourself, Phil, a risk taker?
Yeah, I think so. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you started your own business, you're running your own business. There are days where you don't know where income is coming, and there are days where you go, I'm great, but you're taking risks. You're willing to take that risk. Well, here's the thing. You work in a team, and another person on that team is a risk taker just like you. Will they trust you based on your risk profile? They're not going to have any issue. They're risk takers themselves. Now let's bring another person to the team, and that person does everything in their power to avoid risk. They're risk averse to the extreme. Will they trust you? And the answer is no. They're going to think that you're reckless, that you're irresponsible, that you're taking risks that there's no way that they're going to take. And because of that, they don't trust you. And the crazy thing is, you're the same person. And you know, one of the examples that I give is I teach in college, and it was funny because there is something, you're familiar with a website called ratemyprofessors.com.
Sure,
So I
absolutely.
never heard of that until my younger daughter, who's now a senior in college, got into, so she's signing up for classes, and all of a sudden, um, I see her going to this website called ratemyprofessors.com. And I asked her, Shira, what is that site? And she said, it's students anonymously rate their professors. And I thought that was brilliant. Anonymous reviews of professors. But wait a minute. I'm a professor. I teach at SMU. Do I have a page on Rate My Professors? So we go in and check, and we do. And I'm looking at the first one. The first one gives me 5 out of 5. It says I'm awesome. I'm this and it's great. And then I go to the next one. Next one says his attitude was arrogant, condescending, but he's an easy grader, which really is all that matters in college, right? And I'm looking at the dates. And those dates, those two reviews were posted within 10 days of one another. This was pre-COVID, so those two students had to be in class. None of them got less than a B. Well, because I never gave less than a B. You already know I'm an easy grader. And I did the same thing. I only teach one class per semester, by the way, which means these two students sit at the same classroom at the same time. One of them says I'm awesome, gives me 5 out of 5. Another says I'm awful, gives me 1 out of 5. How come? The same things that I did in that classroom appealed to one person and completely the opposite to the other. Trust works that way too. It's the same behavior that would make one person trust you would make another person distrust you.
Wow. Wow. So the relativeness is personal as well, to your point, right? I have a high risk tolerance. You are a risk person. Great. I trust, or no, I don't. If I opposite there, that makes sense. And what do I want, right? What is important to me might not be what's important to you. Therefore, is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and I would emphasize one thing, or clarify one thing. Um, I used to call it, shared values. So we shared the same values, but then I realized it's not shared. It's compatibility. It's personality compatibility, because sometimes you know the phrase opposites attract, right? I mean, we're opposite, and we're attracted to one another. So it could be the opposite. It could be complementary. I mean, imagine you're an innovator. You always have great ideas. But you know what, Phil? I know you're not great at execution. I, on the other hand, I'm great at execution. I just can't come up with an idea to save my life. So we're completely opposite, but together we'll rock and roll, because you come up with the ideas. All I need the ideas. And I'm going to execute them. You don't want to execute. By the way, I'm the opposite. I'm the person that comes up with ideas and look for somebody to go and execute them. Uh, Opposites, complementary. So the point is, and why is this so important? Because up until now, every book that I read on trust, even books that had the word trust on their cover and were not really books about trust, unfortunately, I read those too. Um, every book says that here is a list of things. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that, you have to do that. And if you don't do any of them, then you're not going to be trusted. But it's kind of a checklist. And the truth is that it's different in every relationship, and that's why it's personal. That's why it's relative. In every relationship, you have to look at yourself. And by the way, that's what I tell people in my workshops. I want you to look in the mirror, but I don't want you to see what you see. I want you to see what other people see when they look at you, if you want to be trusted by them.
Wow. That is a different take on trust for sure. Because I've certainly read, nowhere near as many as you, but I've certainly read many books as well. And it is a check. It ends up being like check the box trust, and that can't possibly be true, right? We're not the same people. That is not how this works. And yet, so many times that cookie cutterness is what passes as expertise and trust. So before we move into breaking this down for some sales folks and finding those habits, why did you decide that trust is the thing that you want to be an expert in, Yoram? Why is it important to you?
I love that question. I wish I would have planted this question myself, but you didn't ask me what questions to ask. So here's what happened. So first I did my PhD research, and my PhD research was on organizational culture, specifically on innovation. I told you that I'm an innovator, always have been associated with innovation, helped companies, whether I worked for them or outside, helped them come up with new ideas, ideate, and so on. And, there were times when I would facilitate something, we would come up with great ideas, and I could see that the moment I'm going to leave, this is it. These are the ideas they're going to have. They're not going to come up with new ideas. I helped them create ideas, but I didn't make them an innovative company. And so when it came to my doctoral research, um, I was trying to come up with topics that were, pretty lowball, because you hear that statement that a good dissertation is a done dissertation. And my mentor, he wouldn't let go. I mean, he kept on pushing. You got to come up with something better, something that will improve your life and the lives of others. And, at some point, he asked me one of the most pivotal questions in my professional career. This was, you asked me to say what is the best advice, but not what is the best question you were ever asked. One of the questions that had the biggest impact on my professional career was, Yoram, what pisses you off? And so my answer, I wanted to say you, because I'm trying to come up with topics and you don't let me, but the words that came out of my mouth: why are people so much more creative when they work in startup companies than when they work in large mature companies? Because I started startup companies. I worked for startup companies. I sold one of them. At that time, I was working for a company that with 35,000 employees was anything but a startup. And I could feel the difference. And even people who worked in startups before, if they come to this large company and all of a sudden things change. So I wanted to research that. That's what I researched. And I realized that really the answer is two words: innovation culture. And I said, okay, great. I'm going to change my direction into innovation culture. And then I asked, I went to interview somebody who was going to be a client at that time. And I asked them about this model that I have of innovation culture. They had none of the good things, all of the bad things. And I started asking, why do you not give employees autonomy? Well, we don't trust them to do things their own way and so on. Why are people not accountable? Why are people not willing to take risks? Well, they don't trust how we're going to behave. Why can't you hold a constructive disagreement? Well, we don't trust. We don't trust. We don't trust. We don't trust. I keep hearing the word trust. And I said, you know what? I think I'm onto something. And then I did a survey in 2018. I asked a simple question, and I asked, what is the most important quality for you in other people? And I asked about 6 types of people, and I know that one of them is going to be of interest to you. I asked about your boss, your employees, your peers, a salesperson trying to sell you something, your government representative, and your spouse. You want to know what? I got the top 5. You want to know what's in number 5?
Yes.
With 3 responses out of 363, in number 5, the most important quality for me in other people is their good looks.
Well, that means we're sunk. Okay, so next one, number 4.
I was about to say, fortunate for you, not so much for me, but yeah, I'll play with that too. But with 61.2%, number 1, trustworthiness. And that was the time when I said, you know what? I think I'm focusing on the wrong thing. I was focusing on innovation, but starting with innovation or strategy is like starting to build a building from the second floor. You don't start with the second floor. Second floor is innovation. First floor is innovation culture. You start by building a foundation. The foundation is trust. I had enough critical mass of content on trust. I asked 20 of my closest friends and family members, what do you think I should do? Stick with innovation, which I've been doing for the last 15, 16 years, or switch to trust? 19 out of 20 said, stick with innovation. So I shifted to trust.
Well, of course, that's good. So is that your ex-wife? Is that who told you to move to trust, or what? Who is the one person
I'm
you
still
could
married
listen
to my ex-wife.
That's good. Your first. You're funny, man. Cool. Well, okay. So that makes sense why you started with it. It is the foundation that absolutely, is solid for me, and I get that. So with that, right? So let's talk then about the habits that make trustworthy salespeople. And you've got some buckets here that I found very interesting: competence, shared values, fairness or symmetry, time, intimacy, and positivity. So,
Yeah.
so let's start. Let's start with competence. We're not going to go through all these here, but I'm going to ask you maybe one that stood out to me as maybe different than I expected, and that is, don't rely on a presentation for competence. Come on, don't rely on a presentation, Yoram.
No, absolutely not. And it was funny. You'll appreciate it, Phil, because it gets very technical. One day, this guy, this fellow from the same company, wanted to come with me to. We were meeting with a very large technology company, probably one of the top three, and we were meeting with them, and he was trying to sell them on an architecture that he wanted to push. Now, we meet 6 a.m. at the hotel room right before we're leaving to meet with them. He opens his laptop, he shows me the presentation, and he goes, this is how I'm going to convince them, and so on. And he's easier for his group to develop it this way. And that's not the reason. That can't be the reason why they're going to accept it. Well, we walk into that meeting, and I'm very perceptive, and I look at their faces, and they look at him, and what I read in their faces, they didn't say a word, but what I read in their faces is, why did you bring him? And I'm turning to him and I go, do you know these people? And he's like, yeah, those are the people I'm trying to convince. So you tried it before? Oh, yes. And what did they say? It's a stupid idea. Okay. Well, that piece of information kind of would have been important at 6 a.m. when we had the conversation, that you already met with them and they already told you it's a stupid idea. But I said, let's do this. When we start the conversation, don't open your laptop. We're not going to start with the presentation. We're going to start with talking. And furthermore, I'm going to start with the talking. Okay. So he closes his laptop reluctantly because he wanted to open and show the presentation, because obviously the presentation is going to do the trick. And I asked a very basic question. I said, this technology that we're talking about, what bothers you the most about it? And they said, well, the thing that bothers us the most is coexistence, how multiple devices sharing the same radio frequency, not understanding each other, not even recognizing each other, using the same spectrum, that bothers us. And I thought about this for a second, and I said, wait a minute. Do you realize that his architecture, and I'll agree with you, as stupid as and inefficient as it is actually the only way that addresses this coexistence? And that wasn't, by the way, his intention. It's a side effect of that technology, not the focus. And they thought about this and they said, oh, wow, you're right. This is brilliant. How come we didn't think about this before? And then they turned to him and they said, what can we do to help you? And he goes, let me open the laptop and show you the presentation. And I'm like, Danny, stop. They just said, this is brilliant. How come we didn't think about this before? What can we do to help you? Is there anything else you want to achieve in this meeting? Because if not, close the laptop, try and catch an earlier flight back home. You're done. You got the deal. You got the. We sometimes, often, we focus on the presentation. We focus on a script. You get those calls all the time. I get those calls all the time. It's a script. You know that it's a script. You can hear that it's a script. How about if you just start by listening, by trying to understand what is it that I need, what is it that I care about, because every person is different. One of the most annoying moments for me, I think, in sales was when I had one of my startups in Israel, and we flew over to a trade show, and my wife came with me as a salesperson. And I'm like, you don't know the technology necessarily, and it was hard, and she's going to sell. And I remember overhearing her saying to someone, "This product is not right for you." And I thought, why in God's name did I even pay for her ticket to fly here? She just told somebody not to buy the product. Until I realized what she realized is something that I didn't, and that was that this product was not for him. And that if he bought it, he would have bought it. That's not the type of sale you want to have, because you're going to have someone that says, well, this doesn't do what I thought it's going to do. And this is exactly the same reason why I tell people that invite me to speak and want to get the Book of Trust to all their participants. I tell them, don't get the Book of Trust. It's not for you.
Wow. So how do we know that, though, Yoram? Like, how do you know that book is not for them? How do you know that that's not for them? I mean, you mentioned listening, but there's got to be more than that.
Yes, definitely, and it starts really with doing your research. There is the sales approach, which is I'm going to hit 10,000 people with exactly the same message, and hopefully 0.1% are going to buy. Or I'm going to spend time. I'm going to hit one person, but that person is going to buy. By the time I do my research, it starts by understanding who you're talking to, understanding where they are, understanding that they're different from you. Understanding that what you care about may not be what they care about, for better or worse. And that plays a big role of personality compatibility. I'll give you another story. I'll touch on the positivity. Part of positivity is what I call empathy. And empathy to me is really seeing things from the other person's perspective as if you were them. Not projecting yourself, but seeing it as if you were them. One of the most annoying things that salespeople do, I'll tell you the story and then I'll tell you what is it that they do, but you'll figure it out. When Maya, my older daughter, was about a year and a half, she wanted to call me at the office. So she asked, Mom, can I call Dad at the office? And Mom said yes, but my wife and I have this agreement. This is why she's still my wife. We have an agreement, and that is she's going to call me. If I can't answer, let's say that she calls me right now. I can't answer. I'm going to ignore. If that phone rings a second time within that same minute from my wife, I'm going to have to say, Phil, I'm sorry. I have to take this. And I'm going to take it. We have that. But even if I do answer, sometimes I answer, even though I'm busy, I'm doing something. She would ask, the first question she would ask is, can you talk right now? If I say, I can, fine, we'll talk. If I say I can't, then we won't. So she told Maya, when you start the conversation, when Dad answers, ask him, Dad, can you talk right now? So I pick up the phone and, Daddy, it's Maya. Can you talk right now? And I said, Maya, it's great to hear you, but I'm right now in the middle of something. And then she went on and on and on and on and on because my wife didn't tell her what to do if I say no. So she just told her, ask the question. But salespeople don't do that often. You answer the phone and they go 100 miles per hour into the sales pitch. That little thing, which is, Phil, is this a good time? This is Yoram from I don't know what, the Book of Trust Publishing, and is this a good time for you to talk? Do you have a few minutes? I promise it's not going to take more than 5. That's such a big difference. When somebody goes into their, I don't even feel bad hanging up on them.
I'm laughing because absolutely, when I'm training salespeople, to ask permission is not a subservient thing, it's a trustworthy thing. It's asking and then respecting that now may not be a good time. Not
Yeah.
asking, did I interrupt? Because of course you did. It's a cold call. But if you have 97 seconds that we can talk right now before you decide to hang up, I totally agree with that. I think that's great. So with that, I think that dovetails into my next point here, Yoram, really well that you make, and that is humor and sarcasm. Are they appropriate? So talk to me about that, because that's an interesting one, and one that salespeople I think get in trouble with.
Well, it's funny because there is a podcast episode that I want to, and you obviously you got to that part of the book too. There is a podcast that I want to write on this. In general, humor and sarcasm, research shows that they actually improve. They improve creativity, they improve productivity, they make us closer friends. I mean, Phil, I love your sense of humor and you are kind of okay with mine. But so the more we use it, the more we're going to grow our friendship. But there is a level of trust that must exist before a certain level of humor. And this goes back to everything is relative. It's not humor is good, humor is bad. There is something that I can say to you, Phil, because I've known you for several years. I can say that to you and you're going to start laughing. Somebody else that you don't know as much as you do me, that you don't know where they're coming from, is going to say the same thing to you and you're going to be offended. You're going to take it personally. So once again, it's relative. You can't just say trust is humor is good, humor is bad. Humor, use the level of humor, get to that line of the trust that they already have in you. Don't cross it. You cross it, now you're going the total opposite direction. You're losing their trust.
Good. No, that's so good, and that's again, I love that you tie that back to your earlier point. So important. It's personal. It's relative. Some of that is time, right? One of your big things. So I'm going to ask you about one more here, Yoram. We could go all day, obviously, right? So the last one that I want to talk
I have
to you
to get
about,
a haircut at 5 p.m. So we
all
can
right.
go until 4:55.
All right, very good, my friend. So with that, right, intimacy is a big one here, and one of the things that you say in the book, and one of your habits here is don't be politically correct, but don't be a jackass either, which I think that's fun. So talk to me about that, Yoram. What does that mean, and how does that help with building trust as a sales rep?
Well, I can tell, and this goes back into the component of, well, it's the component of positivity. And one thing that I said is that positivity is accelerated by the amount of time that you spend with the other person, the frequency that you spend time with them, and the intimacy. And by intimacy, I really, all I mean is face to face, so you can see my body language, because when you only see the words themselves, it's hard to interpret what is what's the meaning behind it. It's when you see words and hear tone of voice and hear body language, that's when you can see and determine consistency. Is there consistency between what you say and how you say it? I have a lot more control over what I say. Well, some people don't have a lot of control over what they say either, but I have a lot of more control over what I say than how I say it. And how I say it is driven by my real motivations, by what I really mean. And so that's why I say put intimacy there. What was where did we start with that? You asked about
Don't be politically correct, but don't be a
oh, yes,
jackass
yes,
either.
yes. Political correctness. So when you are politically correct, it's amazing how many people think that we were not born with a BS detector. Everybody is born with a BS detector. Some of us have stronger BS detectors. When you start being politically correct, and I can tell from your body language that you mean one thing, but you're saying something else, that delta between your body language and your words, typically you see that when somebody is being politically correct. They're saying what they think you want to hear rather than what they think you need to hear. And I'm going to tie this to something. Again, when I was working for that large company, we had a customer, and that customer, everybody said that they hated working with him. He was obnoxious. He was one of those customers that go, I'm the customer, which makes me the emperor. You are the peasant. You're the salesperson. You're a peasant. And I'll treat you as such. And everybody hated interacting with him. And, I wasn't crazy about that. And one day we had dinner. We were both at the conference and we just had dinner. I guess I couldn't find anybody else to have dinner with. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, he said, Yoram, you're the only person in your company that I really enjoy spending time with. I said, really? Why is that? He said, because everybody else, and I know it's because of how I behave to them, how I treat them, everybody would just give me exactly what I want to hear and exactly what they think that I want to hear. You're the only person that has absolutely no problem saying, BS, that's not what you need. Here's what you really need. And you're the only person that does not respect that the customer is always right. And that, by the way, to me, is one of the biggest ways to become a trustworthy salesperson. Customer is not always right. Get this out of your head. You know that they're not right. Don't treat them like they are right, because they can sense that you're being disingenuous. Just tell them, no, I'm sorry. I'd love to do that for you, but that's not what you need. And here's what's going to happen if we do that. And you know what? The alternative is actually cheaper. I make less money on it. Doesn't matter. That's what you need, not this.
Wow. So why don't more people do that, Yoram? I mean, if that is proven research-wise to build more trust, why do more people not do that? Why do more people not tell the truth and actually say what they know the truth to be? Not in an argumentative way, but like reporting the news way.
Yeah, because I think that, I went through a lot of sales training. A lot of sales training is kind of old school. A lot of sales training assumes that, your customer trusts you and your customer. We are in a day and age, there's so much fraud, identity theft, cyber warfare. And I'm just talking about the criminal side, not to mention if I'm trying to sell you something, I really don't care about your need for it as much as I do my money. Think about sales training. Look at videos, look at podcasts and all, and it's all about how to get more clients, how to get more revenue from the same clients. How about a class on how to bring more value? Nobody talks about the value. We only talk about how do we get more money? How do we get more customers? How do we create a funnel that's better, that has higher percentage of revenue paying customers? We treat customers. That's the training that we're getting. We treat customers like objects, not like people that need to trust you. Sometimes, Phil, you and I are members in the National Speakers Association, and we hear a lot of people talk about, things that their customers have not paid, and because of that we're going to be from now on I'm not getting on, I don't know what, I'm not doing this until you pay, and so on. I hate to say this, and hopefully I'm not going to jinx it. I hadn't have a single customer who did not pay. I did not have a single customer, because I can read them well, and I'm not giving them something they don't need, and I can read if they can afford it, and if they can't afford it. And this is not how we train salespeople, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? How do we add more value? That'll be the next course, Yoram. We'll talk about that offline. So, because I think that's important. So great stuff, Yoram. So I'm going to give you the last word, though, my friend. First, folks, I want you to get a copy of the mini book of trust. Don't get the big book. If you find something interesting, though, go get it. Yoram, hold up the sales book, though, because you have a sales book as well that I think is valuable for folks. I don't have a copy of that with me here. Hold that up for us. Yep. So Can I Trust You series about sales, right? Go get that. Get the 50+1 habits. Yoram also has a great sign up on his website that you can go at yoramsolomon.com. So, but Yoram, if there was one more thing about trust that you wanted to share or to reinforce that you've already shared, what would that be?
I'm trying to look at things that I wrote down. I'll share one more thing. When you feel that you're not going to get the deal, the natural inclination is lower the price. I'll just lower the price. If I lower the price low enough, then you're going to buy. I did a study. And in that study, I gave two scenarios: a very trusted salesperson, a very untrustworthy salesperson. And, and I didn't say that one of them was trustworthy and the other was not. I just described them along those 6-component model. And I described them, and they had to decide, the participant in my study had to decide whether this is trusted or not. And then I asked if they both gave you a proposal, and both proposals were for exactly the same thing and for exactly the same price, which one would you take? Well, 100% said, I'm going to take the one that I trust. What if the one that you trust took 10%, asked for a 10% higher price? Which one would you take? 100% took the one with the higher price, with the trustworthy. I shouldn't say they didn't take them because of the higher price. They took him because he was trustworthy. 20%. At 20%, I had about 58% of the participants would still go with the trustworthy one. Overall, I even asked about 50%, and 50%, I was, I think, at about 21% would still go with the trustworthy one. And there are different things that affect this, like how simple is the task? What are the consequences of a bad job? What are the consequences of a bad job if you paint your room? Well, you're going to have to paint it again. What are the consequences of a bad job by a surgeon, a brain surgeon? So how important is trust when you're hiring a brain surgeon to conduct surgery, not on you, on your child? Okay, that makes it even worse. So I ended up, so there are factors, but I focused on like a home renovation project, a $10,000 project. Phil, the trustworthy salesperson on average would get 29.6% higher price premium. There is a premium for price. Don't lower your price. The statement that I say every time I get invited to a sales group to talk about trust or trustworthy salespeople, I tell them one thing, and this is typically the title: sell on trust, not on price.
Sell on trust, not on price. That's a great way to wrap us up and bring us home, Yoram. Like I mentioned, folks, go get yourself a copy of the mini book of trust. Get to know my friend Yoram Solomon more. You can find him at yoramsolomon.com. Check him out on LinkedIn. Check out The Trust Show podcast. Super good stuff there as well. Or go visit him in Dallas or bring him into your organization. Yoram, as expected, man, great stuff. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Phil.